Many complain about Landorus-Therian, and it's easy to do so. Landorus-T is everywhere, always doing its thing, and yeah, it can get repetitive to see it constantly doing its thing over and over and over. It's a major reason why many players find OU boring, and instead turn to other tiers like UU. But why is Landorus-Therian used so much? Is it really because OU players are boring and not creative and safe? Not necessarily. When played competitively, every tier sees its best Pokemon spam, even when the tier itself is quite diverse. For example, Diamond and Pro UU has a well-earned reputation for how conducive it is to creativity, but Venusaur is still used a lot. That said, Landorus-Therian's usage is really high, even for such an elite Pokemon. At one point in Ultra Sun and Moon, it was over 70%, which is absolutely insane. Consider that in Generation 4 OU's Latias Salamence metagame, when Scizor was the most used Pokemon, there were very similar complaints. Everything is boring, no one is creative. I'm sick of seeing Scizor everywhere I go. You know what Scizor's usage was at its absolute peak? 32% in September 2009. Landorus-Therian was used way more than twice that amount month after month after month, and in fact, year after year. It was so fundamentally great that it did its thing 4 generations in a row. So why is Landorus-Therian used such a ridiculous amount in every OU metagame of the past decade? Well, we established that it's always doing its thing, right? In a nutshell, that's exactly why it's used so much. You want Pokemon that can consistently perform, that can consistently do what they're meant to, game in and game out. For Landorus-Therian, it's the combination of the fact that it's always doing its thing, and the thing that it's doing, or rather things, plural, are so valuable to have on a team. Those are the kind of Pokemon that are used when you're playing to win, which is what the competitive side of the game is all about. Generation after generation, Landorus-T is one of the best examples of reliability that players use for the sake of consistency, which is necessary for any kind of success, be it ladder or tournaments. Today we'll explore what exactly is it that makes Landorus-Therian so consistently effective that it works even when you know what's coming, and thus why it's so easy to slap on a team and use it successfully in battle. Also subscribe if you enjoy it. My end of year goal is 400k. Funnily enough, as far as singles are concerned, it's not even the best Landorus form. Landorus Incarnate has been banned from OU in all 4 generations it existed. That begs another question. Why was Landorus Incarnate so good as to always merit Uber status? It's a great one, but that'll have to be another video. However, even when Landorus Incarnate was around, Landorus-Therian was still defining OU, because it wasn't just immensely powerful. It played an essential defensive role in the metagame. This is why Landorus-Therian is such an important Pokemon. The fact it helps check other dangerous threats. In competitive Pokemon, you want to be able to answer the terrifying attackers your opponent throws at you, right? Otherwise, you just crumble. The terrifying attackers are terrifying because there are few Pokemon that can reliably take them on. And with its amazing attributes, Landorus-T is among those few Pokemon while possessing other valuable qualities as well. First, let's break down that defensive role. Landorus-Therian's half-ground, half-flying typing was well known for its defensive excellence far before it burst onto the scene in Black and White 2, having been rocked to great effect by Gliscor even pre-Poison Heal in Generation 4. Flying types are valued for their immunities to Earthquake and Spikes, as well as their resistance to fighting, and with half-ground typing, no longer is the flying type weak to Rock. This is huge for taking on fighters that rely on Rock coverage to hit flyers, as well as not being hindered by a Stealth Rock weakness. The gained immunity to Sandstorm is outstanding as well. This great defensive typing is bolstered by Landorus-Therian's solid defensive stats, and of course, its greatest weapon, Intimidate. Intimidate turned it into the de facto check for nearly every physical attacker. Seriously, there were times where its bulky Rocky helmet sets regularly switched into even water-type physical attackers like Huge Power Azumarill and Mega Gyarados. In a similar vein, Intimidate wasn't just helping against threats Landorus-Therian countered outright, but also notably gave it incredible utility, even if it couldn't actually check the opposing threat by virtue of being weak to one of its moves or being too low on health in general. Simply hitting the opponent with -1 attack was huge in opening up opportunities for its teammates. Of course, the Pokemon that Landorus-Therian does check reliably are among the scariest around. It's amazing to have a Pokemon that wards off terrors like Dragonite, Garchomp, and Terrakion. Incidentally, in Black and White 1, before Landorus-Therian was around, Terrakion was considered broken. Once Landorus-Therian arrived, not so much. Terrakion could theoretically brute force its way past Gliscor with its strong stone edges, but not so much against Landorus-Therian because Intimidate made a huge difference. And that's why Terrakion of all things occasionally ran Hidden Power Ice. Nearly every physical attacker that's actually good has some way of dealing with Landorus-Therian. And because Landorus-Therian is just that excellent, it manages to take them on anyway. It was so good, it was able to ward off the monstrous Mega Mawile of all things, while doing insane things such as surviving even monstrous ice punches from Mega Metachamp and Mega Metagross. And with Rocky Helmet, Landorus-Therian was excellent at playing offense while on the defense, not just withstanding powerful physical moves, but also punishing for being used at all. It used its defensive prowess to generate damage. which is as rare as it is useful. And just like with Intimidate, Rocky Helmet remained useful even if Landorus was too low to actually check something. In Generation 7, the alternative was Iapapa Berry, which almost effectively afforded you 2 defensive Landorus-Ts, which would ward off monsters like Kartana and support your team. Speaking of team support and playing offense, let's get to what elevates Landorus-Therian above your garden variety wall. To do so, let's ask the question, what does Landorus-Therian do once it actually hits the field? Well, it's got some of the best utility moves in the game. Stealth Rock is Stealth Rock, of course, and Landorus-Therian is particularly excellent Stealth Rocker, both thanks to its incredible number of opportunities it gets by virtue of its outstanding defensive profile, and the fact that it can handle anti-hazard options as well. Knockoff is also a superb tool to have in one's moveset. Finally, there's U-Turn, and this is another perfect example of how Landorus-Therian's defense generates offense. It'll switch into something and threaten it out, then capitalize on that switch with U-Turn, which allows it to safely bring in an offensively threatening teammate for free. So Landorus-Therian is an incredible defensive glue, which you can put in your team to hold you together against the frightening prospect of taking on the game's scariest physical attackers. And through this defensive prowess, it enables its team's offense. As if its innate physical checking capabilities weren't enough, in Generation 8, Landorus-Therian also demonstrated its excellence with its specially defensive set, which now took hits well on both sides of the spectrum. It was so good that it became standard for its ability to check Pokemon like Dragapult and Blaziken. However, even in its bulkiest guises, Landorus-Therian is not just hit-taking ability and support moves. Part of the reason it's so good defensively is because it hits hard even without offensive investment. You can't just turn it into setup fodder. Its base attack, after all, is almost Groudon level. This meant that even with 0 attack EVs, it's about as strong as something with base 100 attack, a boosting nature, and max EVs. Its base special attack is solid too. It's higher than the Slow Twins, for example, letting it make the most of Hidden Power Ice in Generations 5 through 7. This offensive capability, which includes a great base speed of 91, means that Landorus-Therian can also become one of the biggest offensive threats in the game as well. And the best part is, thanks to its natural bulk and Intimidate, it's still defensively useful, even when its build focuses more on dishing the hits out. In fact, it being so defensively useful is a big part of what gives it opportunities to dish those hits out. With its commonly seen Choice Scarf set, Landorus-Therian provides the perfect blend of defense and offense. Its newfound speed allows it to revenge kill an enormous variety of threats it could never answer otherwise, such as Mega Alakazam, but this revenge killing would be of no use if it didn't have the power to actually threaten its targets. Plus, its speedy, powerful Earthquakes is one of the scariest moves to be facing down with a weakened team in the endgame, and its moveset is so flexible that even on a Choice Scarf set, it can effectively run Stealth Rock, or in Generation 7, Defog. Ever since Ultra Sun and Moon, the fact it can now remove hazards has lent yet another level of depth to Landorus-Therian's game, as if it wasn't doing a million things effectively already. More out-and-out aggressive Landorus don't have the bulk of the utility set or the speed of Choice Scarf, yet. Though their defensive presence is comparatively limited, it is still very much present thanks to the all-around excellence of Intimidate. This lesser defensive presence isn't really a problem though. While you love what Landorus-T naturally brings to the table in that regard, you're not using it as a wall. You're using one of the scariest offensive threats in the game, capable of crushing more or less anything unfortunate enough to get put in front of it. In addition to its already excellent strength and speed, it can also boost either or both further with Swords Dance or Rock Polish, sometimes even on the same set, allowing it to boost according to the matchup. Either way, it's pretty much guaranteed to be dangerous on a game-to-game basis and has some of the best cleanup potential of any setup threat out there. Plus, some might consider Gravity a spiritual boosting counterpart to Swords Dance. While it doesn't make Landorus-Therian stronger, it nullifies Levitators and Flying types Earthquake immunity, allowing Landorus-Therian to spam the move recklessly against teams that are truly unable to switch into it, and completely turning the tables on would-be answers like Skarmory and Rotom Wash. Not that Landorus-Therian needs to boost or sweep to be threatening, of course. It's an immediate threat between its huge power and fantastic move pool, especially when its item boosts its stabs further, whether that's through Earthplay Earthquake or Flyinium Z turning Fly into Supersonic Sky Strike. Whether it's boosting or all-out attacking, Landorus-Therian isn't just threatening in and of itself. The carnage it leaves in its wake so effortlessly is just significant as a form of team support as its utility sets hit-taking ability. When Landorus-Therian shreds a piece of the opponent's core, it's making direct progress to enable and improve its teammates' capacity to clean up and win the game later on. Plus, even when it's focusing on supporting its team through these huge bursts of direct damage, it can still support its team indirectly without missing a step. Fitting Stealth Rock on offensive Landorus-Therian is the easiest thing in the world, so much so that certain hyper-offense teams use it as a dedicated lead with Stealth Rock and Explosion. It is incredibly reliable at setting the tempo for its team and starting games off with a bang for its teammates in the back to start their overwhelming cascade of offensive onslaught. It is so incredibly easy to fit Landorus-Therian on pretty much any kind of team because it's always going to be good at doing these incredible important tasks. You can't really stop it from doing its thing if you have a good team. Landorus-Therian is good precisely because it's so good against other good Pokemon. It is useful on a fundamental level. Even if you think it's boring to see Landorus-Therian used all the time, which is a fair opinion of course, its presence in the metagame is a good thing. It's difficult to take on all the threatening Pokemon out there. Having something like Landorus-Therian which can check so many of them is key in providing stability in what would otherwise be chaos. Look at the competitive hysteria around Terrakion and Dragonite in Black and White 1 versus Black and White 2 for example. Plus, with its offensive capabilities, Landorus-Therian is also one of the best Pokemon for experimenting with and can catch opponents off guard with superb results. It doesn't have to be two Landorus-Therian spamming HP Ice at each other before switching out, though that fact that it's such an iconic occurrence speaks volumes about how excellent and how common Landorus-Therian is. We'll see how Landorus-Therian does when it eventually comes to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and has to face down Great Tusk, a Pokemon that can rapid spin away its Stealth Rock, knock off its item, and even threaten it offensively with Ice Spinner. It's also been called the Landorus-Therian of this generation. I'm personally excited for that showdown. If you did enjoy this video, make sure you let me know by leaving a like and subscribing, as my end of the year goal is 400,000 subscribers, and also check out my previous discussion video on the greatest metagame you never heard of, Dream World.